Now, how about probiotics? I know when I had irritable bowel, now we're going back 20 years ago, the only supplement I took, so this is back, early 2000s, I made lifestyle changes, diet changes. I read a book called The No Grain Diet. I came off of grains, was eating more of like a paleo style healing diet, and started doing intermittent fasting. And then also I added in probiotics, and it made a big difference for me. And so a lot of people throughout the years have gotten benefits from probiotics. What should we know? What should we look for when it comes to probiotics?
Yeah, so we work with a type of probiotic called spore-based bacteria. And so spores, we definitely we chose those strains because of the research behind them. We know that these are very hardy strains. So the majority of probiotics you find on the market are made up of lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains. And we know just by their nature, they're sensitive, they're more sensitive organisms. They have trouble surviving that trip from when you swallow them through the stomach acid into the intestines. Most probiotics actually die in the stomach acid. We know the stomach is meant to be the gastric barrier. It's protecting us, but we need our probiotics to actually survive that journey through the stomach acid. And so spores actually have this endospore shell around themselves. That shell protects it when it's in its dormant state. And when it gets into the intestines, it actually takes its shell off, and that's when it goes into its live vegetative cell state, when it's in the intestines. So when it's going through the stomach acid, it's actually still in its dormant state, and it has its shell around itself, so it's protecting itself. So again, it's not until it hits the intestines that it takes its shell off, and that's when it becomes alive. And then the spores actually stay there for about 21 to 28 days, where they're working throughout the entire intestinal tract and making a true change in the gut. And if you go kind of back to that garden analogy that I talked about, what these spores do is they go into that garden, they get there 100% alive, where most probiotics would probably not get there. They actually the spores get there, they have the ability to get rid of the weeds in the garden, or at least get rid of the overgrowth of the weeds. And then they have the ability to take those plants that are already there and help bring them back to life, if you will. So we're not going in there and necessarily planting new plants. We're going in there and taking our own bacteria, our own intestinal bacteria, and helping it come back to life and thrive in your gut. And that's the key. And that's why we see such profound results with the product, because we're not just planting a plant in that garden or adding a new beneficial bacteria in our gut. We're actually taking our own bacteria and creating this lush environment in our gut. And that's how we're creating diversity. We have a double-blind human clinical trial on the strains used in Just Thrive on leaky gut. And this was a first of its kind study, showed that it actually caused a 42% reduction in LPS toxins from seeping into the bloodstream. So thereby sealing up the tight junctions, sealing up that gut lining. And then it also showed for the placebo group, the group that wasn't treated in that study, showed a 32% increase in LPS toxins after a month period of time. So what that's telling us is that it's like when you have a leaky gut, it's like this drippy faucet. You have this drippy faucet, and it's not really problematic. For months, years, it's not problematic. And then one day that tub overflows. One day you have an autoimmune issue. One day you have anxiety, depression, or mood disorders, or one day you have rheumatoid arthritis, whatever it is. Well, it didn't just happen one day. This was this drippy faucet, and likely caused by those LPS toxins seeping into the bloodstream and causing this inflammatory response, and a response by your body, and or immune response by your body, and you have this chronic inflammatory response. So it's just really exciting to have something with our spore-based probiotic that actually is helping seal up those tight junctions and close up that gut lining.
Yeah, that's key. When you talk about LPS, that is a potent inflammatory trigger. It's basically the outer waste or the outer cell wall of many of these aerobic bacteria that when they build up in large quantities, in small quantities are normal in our gut. When they build up in large quantities, they cause a lot of different negative responses. And one of the reasons is because when their outer cell wall gets into the bloodstream, drives up a potent inflammatory response. And so the more we can minimize that getting into the bloodstream, the better off we're going to be, the lower rates of overall all forms of chronic inflammation. So yeah, that's a really key marker to be looking at. And that's really great that you guys found that on the study. That's key. Now, these these spore formers, they're the bacillus strains, Bacillus coagulans, subtilis. What are some of the other ones?
So
And
Bacillus subtilis, Bacillus,
subtilis, yep.
yeah, Indicus,
Yep.
which is
Yep.
which is the antioxidant producing strain.
Mm,
That's the really, really cool one because it's Bacillus indicus HU36, and that strain actually produces antioxidants right at the
mm,
site of absorption, right inside your intestines. When it gets there, it starts to produce all these antioxidants. And the researchers actually believe that did this study, the leaky gut study, that that strain was so key in combating that oxidative stress and
mm.
helping heal up that gut lining.
Yeah, that's what good bacteria does is it eats toxins and it poops out these postbiotic nutrients. Some of them are antimicrobial, so they help kill off bad bacteria. Some of them are enzymes to help us digest our food. And then some of them are short chain fatty acids and different antioxidants, B vitamins, vitamin K2, different things like that, that help support the mitochondria in the intestinal cells and make it more stronger, more stress resilient, and also provide nutrients for all the cells of our body. So, that's the beautiful thing about it. Now, these bacillus strains, these spore formers in nature, like our ancestors, hundreds of years ago, you grew your own food and we would find those in the soil. And so when they would pull a carrot out, for example, like for example, in India, they've had vegan diets for a long period of time. But back when people used to grow their own food, they didn't have B12 deficiencies. And then once they started getting on more of a processed diet, vegan diet, they all of them had B12 deficiencies because actually it was the soil bacteria, these spore formers that would help with B12 absorption and kind of changing B12 forms into an absorbable form that their body could utilize. So this is something we've been in touch with, right, since really the beginning of mankind. These bacillus strains. So they played a role throughout the history of mankind.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I always say I'm a huge believer in getting your nutrients from food and only using supplements as what they are, supplementation. But one exception is with spore-based probiotics. I mean, you really aren't going to get spore-based probiotics anywhere in the modern world because our soil is deplete of all of these bacteria. Like I said, if you go to these different tribes in Tanzania or wherever you could find the bacillus strains in the soil there, but you're not going to find it here in the US. And so you really, in order to get these bacillus strains, you need to take a spore-based probiotic.